Welcome to Crimson Narratives. Here, we journey through shadows, where truth is stranger, darker, and more horrifying than fiction. If you crave stories of true crime that will chill your bones and linger in your thoughts long after the video ends, this is the place. Make sure to subscribe and stay with us, because tonight, we confront one of the most horrifying figures in criminal history. His name was Andrei Chikatilo, remembered forever as the Butcher of Rostov, a man whose 12-year reign of terror left more than 50 victims brutally murdered across Soviet Russia. His crimes were not just an eruption of violence, they exposed the deep flaws of a society that insisted monsters like him could never exist within its borders. The story begins long before the killings, in a small Ukrainian village called Yablakan, in 1936. The land was bleak, haunted by famine and fear. Stalin's collectivization policies had ripped through Ukraine only a few years earlier, causing the Holodomor, a man-made famine that claimed millions of lives. Survivors whispered of desperate axe neighbors, consuming the flesh of the dead, children vanishing into hunger's maw. Into this bleakness, Andrei was born, a frail boy destined to grow up under the shadow of loss and brutality. His father, Roman, was conscripted into the Red Army during World War II and captured by the Nazis. When he returned after the war, instead of being welcomed, he was condemned as a traitor, a stain that fell not only on him, but on his entire family. His mother, Anna, left alone through much of Andrei's childhood, raised him in abject poverty. She frightened him with macabre stories, the most haunting being that his older brother had been kidnapped and eaten during the famine years. Whether this story was true or simply a cruel tale told to scare him, it sank deep into Andrei's impressionable mind. Life offered little comfort. Andrei was weak, shy, and constantly bullied. He wet the bed, stammered, and retreated further inward. But the cruelest blow came in adolescence, when he discovered he was impotent. The shame gnawed at him. In a society where masculinity was tied to strength, productivity, and virility, he felt like a ghost of a man. Yet one disturbing incident altered the course of his life. While wrestling a girl as a teenager, pinning her against her will, he felt a surge of arousal. In violence, he found what intimacy denied him. Desire fused with domination, and a seed of monstrous compulsion took root. Still, Andrei sought the mask of normalcy. He was intelligent and read voraciously, immersing himself in Soviet literature and propaganda. He served briefly in the Red Army, returned home, and pursued work. Socially awkward, he struggled to form relationships, but eventually he married a woman named Feodosia. Their marriage was cold and mechanical, intimacy rare, yet they produced 2 children, 2 neighbors. He appeared to embody the Soviet ideal, a family man, a worker, a quiet presence, but behind the facade, humiliation and rage festered. By the 1970s, Chikatilo worked as a teacher. Students found him unsettling. He touched them inappropriately, lingered too long, stared too intently. Parents complained, but Soviet bureaucracy abhorred scandal. Instead of confrontation, authorities quietly transferred him from school to school. Rather than exposing him, they protected the image of their system. Andrei learned a crucial lesson. As long as he looked ordinary, as long as he played the role, he could act without consequence. In 1978, the mask slipped. His first known victim was 9-year-old Yelena Zakotnova. He lured her to his home with promises of showing her a toy. When she resisted, he strangled her and stabbed her repeatedly, disposing of her body in a river. That night, he experienced release, unlike anything before. For the first time, he had satisfied his hunger, not through intimacy, but through blood. He had discovered his ritual. From that moment, Chikatilo prowled the liminal spaces of Soviet life. Train stations, bus depots, and lonely forest paths. These places were filled with the vulnerable runaways, orphans, weary travelers. He learned to lure them with food, money, or a place to rest. Once isolated, he unleashed his fury. He strangled, stabbed dozens of times, mutilated his victims horrifically. Often he gouged out their eyes, convinced they trapped his image. Some victims were disemboweled, their sexual organs cut away. Whispers suggested cannibalism. The scenes he left behind were so grotesque that investigators wondered if satanic cults or ritualistic killers were responsible. His victims were not limited to one type. He killed young girls, young boys, teenagers, women, sometimes even men. This randomness baffled investigators, making his next move impossible to predict. For families, it spread terror. Parents warned their children never to travel alone. Fear gripped Rostov, yet the Soviet state clung to its denial. Serial killers, they insisted, were products of decadent Western society, not of socialism. Admitting otherwise meant admitting weakness. This blindness allowed Chikatilo to kill with impunity. Police, under immense pressure, made grave mistakes. They arrested innocent men. In one infamous case, Alexander Kravchenko, previously convicted of a minor crime, was accused of a girl's murder. Despite flimsy evidence, he was convicted and executed. Years later, the truth emerged. The real killer was Chikatilo, but by then, an innocent man was dead, executed to preserve the illusion of justice. Meanwhile, the true predator continued his spree. Through the early 1980s, the bodies kept appearing. Sometimes weeks passed between murders, sometimes days. In one shocking stretch, he killed 2 victims within the same week. Each crime became more frenzied, more violent. His compulsion could not be contained. Investigators formed a massive task force. Hundreds of officers patrolled forests, combed train stations, and interrogated suspects. Chikatilo was questioned multiple times. He was even placed under surveillance. Yet, he always slipped away. His mild, bespectacled appearance deceived them. How could this unremarkable man be the monster they hunted? Meanwhile, the Soviet press, bound by censorship, said little. Citizens learned the truth through rumor. Some believed foreign agents were spreading terror. Others feared satanic cults. But the reality was simpler and more horrifying. The killer was a Soviet man, a father, a teacher, walking unnoticed among them. By the late 1980s, the USSR was changing. Under Gorbachev's glasnost and perestroika, censorship weakened, and whispers turned to headlines. Citizens began to learn the scale of the murders. Fear spread further. The case was dubbed the Forest Strip Murders, and investigators finally admitted they were dealing with a serial killer. The manhunt intensified. In 1990, his reign of terror ended. At a train station, officers noticed Chikatilo behaving strangely, approaching children, pacing nervously, carrying rope and a knife. They detained him. At first, he denied everything. But investigators had grown wiser. Under pressure, confronted with evidence, he broke. What followed was a confession so chilling, it left even hardened detectives shaken. He admitted to 52 murders, recounting each one with exacting detail. Names, places, wounds, he remembered them all, as though replaying his dark theater of violence. His trial, in 1992, shocked the world. To protect others, he was kept inside a steel cage. Behind bars, he ranted and raved, baring his teeth, behaving like an animal. Families of victims wept as he described their loved ones' final moments without remorse. He mocked the court, laughed at accusations, and seemed to revel in the spectacle. Yet his testimony was clear and damning. He was convicted of 52 murders, though many believe the real toll was higher. The judge declared, "For this crime, you deserve no mercy." Chikatilo was sentenced to death. In 1994, on Valentine's Day, he was executed by a bullet to the back of the head. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. The monster was gone, but the wounds he left behind remained open. Families would never recover. Trust in the Soviet justice system was shattered, and the forests of Rostov would forever be haunted by the shadow of the butcher. Yet the case leaves haunting questions. Was Andrei Chikatilo born a monster, twisted by famine, humiliation, and repression? Or was he proof that true evil can erupt anywhere, in any era, under any system? The truth may never be known. Even today, his name chills the blood. In Rostov, parents grip their children tighter at train stations. The woods echo with the memory of footsteps that will never return. The Butcher of Rostov remains a scar in history, a reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not creatures of myth, but men who walk among us, unnoticed, until the mask finally slips. So remember, what we tell here are not legends, not fairy tales, but the darkest truths of human history. And if you want to keep uncovering these shadows with us, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Crimson Narratives, because the darkness of history is endless, and together, we are only just beginning to uncover it.